Joining me now on Podcast Host Revealed, we have David Callan, co-host of I Spied with Michelle Stephenson. David, welcome to Podcast Host Revealed. How are you?
I'm really well. I'm excited to be here, actually.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about your podcast because it's such a unique show delving into topics I'm fascinated in. So
Spies.
Really, yeah.
Terrorism.
Exactly. I've just watched the whole James Bond series from cover to cover. So
The most frustrating thing for me when I joined ASIO was the fact that it wasn't like James Bond.
I can
And
imagine.
in fact, everybody has that complaint when you get in there. It's like, what do you mean no guns? It's like no guns, no really cool cars.
No Q giving you gadgets.
Oh, there is what you call the tech section. So the tech section do have pretty cool gadgets, but you're not allowed to play with them. That's for the tech boys.
Good. Well, let's go back to the beginning, before I Spied started. What was your sort of reasons for getting into podcasting?
Well, I was asked by the producers, and it was literally COVID brought it all about. I'd been doing I Spied as a live stage show, just the story of what it was like to work for ASIO back in the 80s and 90s. And I'd worked with the producers on a number of times on different projects with things like The Chaser, Manic Times and stuff like that. And out of the blue, Anthony called me and went, do you want to do a podcast about you want to do a podcast? And I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? And he said, I Spied. And I went, who wants to hear that old crap? And his thing was like, are you kidding? It's like, mate, people really like podcasts about intelligence and spies, and there's no one in Australia doing it. So how about you get onto it? And I'd done a podcast with Michelle previously, just one episode. I'd appeared as a guest on her podcast, and I sort of went, oh, gee, I wonder if she'd be interested in coming on board. Gave her a call, and it was like, oh, God, yeah. That was the favourite episode I ever did, was that one with you, because you're an idiot. And, this beautiful relationship was born, and here we are.
Fantastic. And what's your idea for the show? What do you want it to be about?
Well, it started out being about me talking about what it was like to work for ASIO, but it's morphed over the last year. It's really morphed into what's going on in the intelligence and security world now. And also, I've got a fairly unique bent on it, because not only have I had the experience of working in that world, but also a lot of what I do, I always look for the funny within it. When I worked for ASIO, I had one job where I was writing parliamentary and cabinet briefs. So we'd have to let cabinet know what's going on in the intelligence world. And one of the things I was always trying to do is find a way of putting jokes in the brief for my own amusement. Now, so for me, it's like when I find something that's interesting, I want to laugh about it. So the purpose of it is to inform and educate people as to what's going on in intelligence, and also disavow the myths, but at the same time, find something funny about it.
Yeah, right. And do you think you've sort of made it into what you wanted it to be?
It's getting there. The funny thing about it for me is we didn't really have that much of a plan. We started out with 12 episodes. That was the idea. And then once we got past 12 episodes, we just kept going. We went into Christmas and we thought, we don't want to leave a void over the Christmas break. So we recorded 10-minute episodes. We called them just bite-sized eps. We recorded these short episodes, and that was when it really started to change, because the 10-minute episodes was just little factoids that weren't worth an entire episode, which is, we generally run to 30 minutes. And they weren't large enough for that, but we still really wanted to talk about them. Now we find that we're doing generally when we record an episode, we'll record a bite size as well, simply because something will pop up within that episode. It's like, let's do a quick 10-minute about this. And that normally goes out first. So people have already been sort of goaded as to what's coming up, and then we're into the bigger episodes. So yeah, the thing that I love about it is it's constantly morphing. It's constantly mutating. It's a virus.
No virus jokes, please, David. So going back to the beginning then, when you walked in to record that first episode of I Spied,
Yep.
Done a lot of stage work, so it's not new material, but how did you feel recording your first podcast episode for I Spied?
I don't think we ever aired it. No, actually, we had to re-record it, but not because of anything wrong. We did a sort of test episode and then sat down with the producers and went, well, what do we like? What don't we like? What works? How's the energy? How's the dynamic? And funnily enough, I mean, Michelle is such a professional and also such a good journalist. She's got a really unique way of not only prying things out of me, but also dragging me back on track when I get distracted. And it's very easy for me to get distracted. The other thing that we discovered...
I'll take note of that for this interview.
You better remember. I'm going to go off on a tangent in a minute. You watch. The other thing that was really interesting about it was the first episode, which is about 2 weeks into my career at ASIO, I discovered that a guy I went to high school with was potentially a bomb maker for a terrorist organisation. I'd basically made a few statements in that test episode that were completely blown out of the water when I made statements about a certain case. I can't actually tell you what it is because it's now sub judice, because the New South Wales Police, the day after we recorded the episode, reinitiated the investigation because new evidence had come to light. And it was like, the funny thing was, I'm reading the article going, yeah, we all know this, until I realised, no, we don't all know this. I know this because of what I did when I worked for ASIO. So it's like, oh, hang on, the police are now acting on intelligence from that era to re-examine this case. So I had to ring everyone and go, we need to re-record the episode because it's all become sub judice. And what was fabulous about it was the guys turning around and going, no, don't worry about it, it's fine. I was terrified. I thought I was going to be in a lot of trouble. I'm a very nervous person
Got a lot of trouble from your producer for not wanting to get sued.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. I thought I thought I was going to get
arrested.
I thought I was going to get in trouble for wasting time.
All right.
But as they sort of said, it's ones and zeros, mate.
Yeah, podcasts are all about wasting time.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We can always get you back in the studio. And even Michelle turned around when I said, look, it's sub judice. She was like, yep, great. Yep. Let's re-record it, and just drop that bit. One of the producers said we could try to edit it. And I went, let's just go back and do it all again. And because of that, the nice thing was you had a few runs at the game, and we very quickly got into a rhythm that worked for us, which started, and even to the point of how the episode opens, how the credits roll, and then how we move into the actual body of the podcast. That evolved very organically out of what we did over those 3 records. And now it's pretty much bedrock is how we play the game. And it's great. It's a really nice format, the way we figured it out.
Yeah, you must spend a lot of the time while you're recording thinking about what you can and can't say about these old things.
I started taking a lot of notes. I now have a notebook in front of me with big signs going, do not say this, right? I've got boxes drawn on bits of paper saying, avoid that. And because you do touch on areas that could be regarded as national security. I mean, to be honest, I'm so far removed from it now that what I know is more systems analysis and modus operandi, so standard operational procedures, as to actual national secrets. So it's, for me, it's difficult for me to tread on national to actually breach security, but you've still got to keep an eye out for it. So a lot of the time, there have been episodes where I've started something, and again with podcasting, my experience is in radio. So for me in podcasting to go, hang on, no, I don't want to do that. Can we stop and go back and start this section again? And no one minds. We just sort of go edit here, and the editor, rolls his eyes as we come out of the booth saying, there's lots of edits to be done today. A lot of coughing. That's the other thing. I cough a lot when I'm doing it.
Why?
I don't know. Probably because I speak.
Are you allergic to Michelle?
No, I'm chronic asthmatic.
Okay.
But also the big problem is I speak very quickly and I don't stop to take a breath. And I realised I shouldn't drink milky coffee before going on air because that gums you up.
Yeah, right.
So as a voice artist, I'd never do it. As a voice artist, I would never do it. But as a podcaster, there's something so relaxed about podcasting that I love. It's a very easy format. It's a very easy medium to work.
Yeah. What about you spoke about sort of you're far removed from being at ASIO. So I think you left in the early 90s.
Yeah.
How have you stayed relevant? How have you kept up with the information and obviously you can't keep up with the stuff on their side, but how do you keep up with the other
I'm
side?
lucky enough to have a few friends that still work, not there, but work in that field. Most of them have moved into the private sector, and man, private sector intelligence and security is huge. One of them is now a foremost authority on on cybersecurity, like one of the top 5 guys on the planet. Another one of them he's a security consultant for the Olympics and also private industry. And he was on one of our episodes talking about his experiences in China because he worked with Chinese intelligence as a private consultant. So I've got these contacts in the industry. But the other thing is thank God for the internet, because there is so much information out there. And as long as you're smart enough, as I always say to people who say, you've seen this, it's like, check the source. As long as you check your sources, which is just standard operational procedure, you're generally going to find the answers you want out there. So there's a lot of information that's still floating around.
Sounds like that'd be fun, just shooting the shit with your old mates from ASIO. And
and the thing that was most surprising for me, particularly when we interviewed one of them, was I always sort of thought I was a bit of a flake and a bit of an idiot. Well, I am a bit of a flake and a bit of an idiot. But the great thing was at one point Michelle asked a question which I answered. And then she sort of looked at our guest and said, right, we know what the idiot thinks, but what? And it was like, no, the idiot's right. And part of me was like, one, everyone still thinks I'm an idiot. But yeah, it's kind of been validating for me that what I learnt in ASIO, I wasn't wasting my time there. I really thought, because I only joined ASIO to do theatre at night. Literally, Canberra has this incredible amateur theatre scene, and that's all I wanted to do, was be an actor. But ASIO was a job that I could do and would give me flex time, and I could go and do that. But while I was there, you can't be involved in an organisation like that without it changing the way you think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just is it, I guess, the analysis you take to things?
Yeah.
Well, how has it changed the way you think?
You look at anything that's going on in the world through a prism of what's the outcome here, who benefits from what's about to happen. So something like what's going on in the South China Sea, that was something that was very prevalent. We knew about that in the 80s. Like governments around the world knew about it in the 80s. Everyone's like going, oh, well, this new development where China are taking over islands in the sea. Well, they've been doing that for a long time. It's just it hasn't been as noticeable because they kept it very small. Now they're beginning to stretch their wings. Again, when I worked for ASIO, China, while being a target of interest, wasn't a major target. They was just coming out of the Cultural Revolution. Mao Zedong was still chairman, and then it all changed with Tiananmen Square. Once Tiananmen Square hit, Chinese internal policy changed dramatically, where they went, we're going to give you capitalism, we're going to give you flat screen TVs, and we're going to give you money to play with, but we're still going to have an outward control of what you can see and hear. So it became an economic powerhouse. It basically became the factory of the world, and that gave it a lot of power on the global stage. So watching something like China's evolution over the last 30 years is something that I probably wouldn't have paid attention to had I gone into another job. But because I've worked at ASIO and your job is to watch the world around you, that interest never died. A really good example of it was, people often ask me where I went to university, and I just say I went to ASIO because it basically set up the way I think about things and the way I approach things in the world, right? I never travelled overseas when I worked for ASIO. Well, I went to New Zealand. That
doesn't count. That definitely doesn't count.
It's not going overseas so much as going back in time.
Exactly.
No, I didn't go overseas. One, because there were certain countries we were limited, we couldn't go to, particularly target countries. I mean, when I was at ASIO, the Soviet Union still existed, right, up until 1990. That was some of my best work, getting rid of the communists. But what happened was, what was interesting about it was you came away. We had to read the paper, at least 2 to 3 papers every day. The old joke of public servants reading the paper, first thing they do when they get to work is read the paper. We'd read the paper every day. You'd read at least 2 or 3 papers, and the organisation supplied them because there could be something in the paper that's important, that reflects on what we're targeting at the time, and you needed to know that. So it basically gave me a great interest in current affairs, in politics, in global strategy and tactics and military. And I was a historian or an historical student growing up. I was a great student of history, and it just sort of moulded who I am.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience to have. I'd recommend it for everyone.
Everyone join ASIO.
Join ASIO, at least just for a couple of years. They'd love to have you.
All right, so let's go back to I Spied. I'm going to do a Michelle and pull things back. You record the first episode, you go back, you re-record it this time. You're not going to get in trouble from ASIO for spilling national secrets. How did you feel when you sort of your stories out as a podcast?
I think for the first month and a half was the worst 6 weeks of sleep I'd ever had.
The worst 6 weeks of sleep ever. Why?
Even even worse than like newborn baby. And I was terrified. I was so anxious. I was waiting for someone to ring up. You know, it's the classic imposter syndrome thing where it's like you're full of shit, right? And the strange thing about it was was I'm going to run out of things to say. I was really worried about running.
Pretty confident that's not ever going to happen to you.
According to my mother, it hasn't happened yet.
We've just met.
Yeah, I know, and you've already figured it out. I was really worried about finding things that are relevant to say. I mean, that's been the interesting thing about the way it's morphed. Things like Armenian Dynamite, which is the first episode, and then the full Minczel about the Russian diplomat and the strip club. Those episodes, they're really good and fun and silly. And it also highlights the utter ridiculousness of intelligence and how it works. But then I was like going, gee, do we have these really big stories? We don't have any of these really big stories. What am I going to do? But what was interesting and is still interesting is the way we'll talk about something in an episode and it will trigger a memory, something I'd utterly forgotten about. And it's like, oh my God, I got an episode that we can do about this. And the number of times I'll sort of like say something, we'll walk out of the booth and I go, you know when you said that? Yeah, it's triggered a memory. And Michelle just looks at me and goes, just send me an email and tell me what we're doing. Yeah, and the thing that is beautiful is she does her research. She's very fastidious. I'll say, I want to talk about the radicalization of terrorists, and she doesn't walk in blind. She's done her research the way I've done my research. And so we get a really nice dialogue going on. But yeah, the first 6 weeks were terrifying. I was waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat going, oh my God, either someone's going to arrest me or someone's going to call me out as an idiot. And you know what? They have. The best one was someone called me out as an idiot.
What, a spy from ASIO?
No, I don't know who it was, but this guy basically said, yeah, well, you know what? This is the way it really works. And I went, no, it doesn't, mate. It was on Twitter, I think.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly. What an idiot. I started answering Twitter. But basically,
a spy's tweeting out how to be a spy.
This guy called me out on something and I just went, no, that's not how it works. He went, look, mate, I think I know. I've read a lot. And I went, yeah, well, dude, I think I know.
I've seen the Bond movies.
I was there, right? Where you're saying that you think this has happened. I was a witness to the event. So, no, you're wrong. Right, and that was one of the things where I went, I don't feel so bad about myself anymore. It's been quite empowering to get into the studio and talk about it. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
I find it surprising, though, that you had this anxiety when it was coming out, because you've done all these stage performances about it. You know, you're a long-time performer.
Yeah.
And it's not live. Podcasting is a very flexible medium. The fact that it really got into you like that.
The great thing about doing the show live, and it's very much like improv. A really good friend of mine, the Dave Callan in Melbourne, Irish.
The funny
Dave.
one.
Yeah, the funny one, as opposed to the serious one. Well, how much am I getting paid to be here?
Sorry.
So anyway,
I'm really mean to my guest.
That's all right. I'm used to it. I'm with a journalist who basically says I'm with an idiot in the studio. So anyway, Dave came and saw the show. We were performing in the same venue. So I stuck around. I showed up early one night to watch his show, and then he stuck around to watch mine. And afterwards, we're comparing notes, and his was this incredibly absurdist story with about a man in a lighthouse, or two men in a lighthouse. And he just turned, I went, I love your show. It's just so absurd, and there was so much improv. And he turned around and looked at me and went, you go off on these weird tangents and then you suddenly get back to the story. How do you do it? I just basically turned around and went, well, what happens is the bare bones, the spine of the show is a chronology of my life with ASIO. It's really hard for me not to find it. It's always over my shoulder. So I can go off on these weird tangents. The great thing about the show is the first time I did the live show, it was every Sunday night for 7 weeks at the old Fitzroy Hotel. So I do the show, and then the director and I would spend a week, like we'd give it a couple of days, then go back and look at all the stuff that had happened in the show and go, well, what worked there, what didn't work there, can we tweak that, change that, fix that, and we just tinkered with it. So by the end, we wound up with a 2-act play of about 90 minutes that was rock solid. And then I was approached by the Adelaide Fringe. Can you come down to the Fringe and do it? And that was 4 weeks, 8 shows a week. And that's when it really started changing, because while I get bored really quickly if I got to say the same thing over and over. So I started,
but also you lose something when you just go up there reciting lines.
I remember I was asked to audition for The Lion King, and my audition wasn't great, mainly because I'm not a singer. And my wife I was a bit disappointed. And my wife turned around and said, "You'd have hated every minute of it, because it's Disney, it's structured, it's so rigid." So with I Spied, it kept changing, and new jokes would show up, new things would happen in the intelligence world, and I'd drag it in. Like the last iteration of the Light Show, I've got a little sketch about how Vladimir Putin is the Old Spice guy of global politics, and then do an entire Old Spice ad as Vladimir Putin, right? Which is a lot of fun. It was a really, really fun scene to do, but that didn't exist back in 2003 when I first did the show, because Putin wasn't really on the radar back then. I think there was probably a Boris Yeltsin joke in there somewhere. So it constantly evolved. With the podcast, and the other thing is, I'm an improviser, the most disposable art form on the planet. You do that scene, it's never going to be done again. Suddenly I'm doing something that's recorded. That's what really got me. That scared me. I'm not used to being recorded. I haven't done recorded stuff. The last I do commercials, and occasionally I read a lot of voiceover stuff. But when it comes to it was recorded, and B, it was all about me, and that suddenly made me feel exceptionally exposed. Like, I was very nervous. I was waiting for the hammer to fall. I was waiting for the universe to turn around and go, right, hubris, you're covered in it, and we're going to bring you down. And the thing was, it was nice. The producers and Michelle, the three of them have literally turned around and gone, literally talking the psychopath off the ledge. I'm standing there on the ledge of the building going, "We're going to jump." It's like, no, last week I recorded a mini episode that all three of them just went, we're not broadcasting this.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They went,
what was in it? Do you want to?
It was a rant.
Okay.
It was a rant about
government?
No, James Morrow in the Daily Telegraph did something about how MI6 had flown the transgender flag, and the MI6 has been turned into a woke thing, and James Bond will never be the same. And I saw red. And I recorded a mini episode, and I told Michelle, and she went, "I don't think we need to do this." I went, "Oh, I really want to do it." And I recorded it, and it literally ended with her going, "Are you happy you got that off your chest now?" And I went, yeah. And she went, "It's never going to air." And I went, "I think it's really good." And within an hour, both producers had gone, "Yeah, look, mate, we're not going to send that." And it was like, first I was really hurt. I thought, how dare you not trust me? And they turned around and went, "It's not funny. It's actually quite ugly. You're just really angry, and we don't want to hear that."
I really want to see it now. That's very good.
It was me being frustrated that these guys have just missed the point entirely. And also what really frustrated me was the journalist was trying to be funny. And it was also Paul Murray from Sky News. They were trying to be funny, and it's like, it's a really bad joke. And the thing for me is particularly things like transgender and homosexuality, it's only recently that MI6 have allowed you to be homosexual, right? That caused them no end of troubles from the 30s right through to the 70s and 80s, because if you were gay and working for MI6, you couldn't tell anyone. And that made you ultimately so easy to be corrupted and compromised by a foreign service. And it wasn't until them flying the transgender flag basically is turned around to anyone who's anyone in the LGBTQ universe. It allows them to go, if somebody walks up and goes, "We know you're gay and we're going to tell your boss." It's like, boss already knows, mate. Go and tell him. And it really frustrated me. But it was really angry. Even my wife, when I got home and I said, they rejected that episode, she went, "Oh, someone had his cranky pants on." I was like, damn it. So
It's funny though you say you're anxious. In listening to the first half a dozen episodes of I Spied, doesn't come across. You seem super confident, having a great time, telling all your stories.
It's not until I think about it. Doing it, I don't have a problem. I'm really comfortable with doing it. I mean, to me, I kind of feel like I found my element. I've already sort of like got other ideas for podcasts. One, which I want to call your dad, is Dad, you're fucked, which is just my sons sitting there. We were at a wedding, both boys. One's finishing high school, one's finished high school. They both had a few beers, and they were sitting there with my mother and I, and they said, "So boys, what's Dad like?" And they just ripped into me. And I went, this would make a really fun podcast. Just two sons giving their father a weekly report on, you made us go sailing and we hated you for it. And all that sort of, and digging into how could I be a better father, but also just making it a bit of stupid.
That could be ugly.
Yeah, but, ugly for everyone. But what I like about it is that when I'm doing it, I feel very free, very relaxed and very comfortable. It was for the first few episodes, it was when I sat back and went, oh my God, what have I said? Does anyone care about this? And it really was like at the moment yesterday, I got a tweet from Andrew P. Street. Andrew is actually introduced me to Michelle because he was doing the podcast with Michelle.
And who's Andrew?
Andrew P. Street's a former Sydney Morning Herald journalist.
Oh, right, yep.
Andrew, lovely bloke. Anyway, Andrew has been a big fan of the podcast, but I made a mistake of thinking that a Cause song was a Cranberry song was actually a Cause song. So he, on the I Spied Twitter feed, so at I Spied podcast, on that Twitter feed, he said, David and Michelle love this episode, but that's a Cranberry song, not a Cause song. And I just watched Twitter light up. But it wasn't people going, oh, this guy's a bloody idiot, doesn't know what he's doing. It was people coming up mismatching Irish bands to Irish songs. And it was hilarious. And to me, that was like, yep, this is what it's about. This is about silly, right? Because ultimately intelligence and security is an incredibly dangerous, incredibly perilous, and incredibly important thing. And anything that is that perilous and important has to be laughed at. And when I worked for ASIO, the guys there, the people that work for ASIO have a phenomenal sense of humour. None of them take it too seriously. You go mad. But I would be nervous because everything's recorded. That's where the anxiety came from. In the room, I'm fine. It's once I get out of the room and I think 5 minutes about it, and then
what did I say?
Oh my God.
So the podcast starts, it's released. What about like your friends and family? I mean, did you get a lot of people going, I didn't even know you worked at ASIO? And, obviously.
Oh no, by now everyone knows I work for ASIO because that was I remember when I first did I Spied the play, and I've been doing stand-up with James O'Loughlin for years, and he called me into the ABC. He was
old friend of mine?
Yeah, 702 Nights, and he called me in to go, and I walked in, he was like, what the hell? And I went, what do you mean? He went, ASIO. I went, so what? He went, no, none of us knew. None of the stand-ups. I went, well, I didn't talk much about it. He went, but it's hilarious. I went, I know, but he went, why didn't you talk about it then? I went, I didn't really feel comfortable about it. And I did not feel comfortable about using ASIO as material. It took a good decade of separation to go, yeah, it's time to talk about this now.
What about like dinner parties now? Is it people, well, not that people have dinner parties, but, when you're out with coffee, do people go, oh, I heard this episode, tell me more?
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of that now?
I was at a cocktail party it sounds so.
Was it a cocktail party?
I was at a cocktail party at the Ceiling Club. I was at a cocktail party and one of our really good friends at the club just sort of turned around and went, oh my God, the last episode. She went, your podcast, gee, I was really sad it ended. And I was like, what are you talking about? She went, well, you only had 12 episodes. I went, we're up to 40. And she went, what? You said it was only going to be 12. I went, did you subscribe? She went, no, I just go and find it.
I hate people who do that.
But no, the great thing about it was she went, oh, that's fantastic. I've got so much stuff to get into. And then I had like the daughter of a friend walk up to me and went, is it true what's going on? The whole podcast. I went, yeah, it's true. I went, do I embellish? No. But she went, so have you been listening? I went, yeah, I'm actually interested in joining. And I went, yeah. And she went, yeah, I really went, I'm more than happy to talk to you about what the recruiting process is like and the best way for you to approach it. I can't tell you what will happen, but I can give you an idea of what to expect. But I said, but ultimately, don't tell them you listen to this podcast. It won't help.
You'll be out.
Yeah, a lot of people do sort of like go, can you tell me more? And yeah, sometimes I can. But also, a lot of the time we don't go into detail just for expedience, but with something like, a dinner party and someone. So, I mean, somebody asked me, what was the dumbest thing you did at ASIO? And it was like, getting the speed record for the mail car across Kings Avenue Bridge in Canberra. And they went, what are you talking about? I said, I had to deliver something to the Canadian Embassy very quickly. It was a communique that had come through our communication system because theirs was down and they needed it urgently. And they went, so you're given permission? No, I wasn't given permission.
What was the record? How fast did you
172 kilometres an hour over Kings Avenue Bridge.
What sort of car?
It was a Nissan Skyline.
I didn't know they could go that fast.
Yeah, nor did I. I really didn't know you could go that quick.
What about ASIO's reaction then to the show? The podcast?
Zero.
Zero?
Zero reaction. And it will always be that way.
And did you get any reaction from the stage show?
When I did it in Canberra, I held a press conference outside the ASIO building, which, if you really want to annoy ASIO, hold a press conference at the ASIO building at midday.
Yeah.
Because that means no one can leave the building and it ruins everyone's lunch, right? So now it doesn't matter. The ASIO building's now within the defence perimeter. Before then, it was sitting just outside. So you had literally public access to the front door of the building. And it didn't help that it had ASIO written on the front of the building either.
Very Australian.
Yeah, guys, the committee got it wrong. So the reaction I got from the Director General at the time was he sent a memo around the building saying, we heartily condemn this show to the staff, not to me, to the staff, said, we condemn this show and anyone who goes to see it will be regarded as a black mark on your record. Well, thanks. That's 500 tickets sold. Right? Everyone at ASIO went, hey, free public. Frosty's bugging it up again. Let's go and see what he's up to. So I had it was really nice to catch up with a lot of people I hadn't seen for years. They all showed up at the show and it was great. A lot of drinking, a lot of fun.
No, like, what are those sniper things that go on you during the show?
My father, when I was doing it in Canberra, my father used to walk into the theatre at just the right time. He was handed a laser sight. Because I had a joke about a laser sight on my head. And
Dad's very funny.
Dad was just like, gimme, yep. And he'd line me up. He loved that bit of the show. And he'd literally hand them and go back out in the car park, get in his car, drive around the corner back home. It was.
That's very funny.
Yeah. So, no, I'm not getting any reaction from ASIO and I don't expect any reaction from ASIO simply because, they'd have to admit that they made the mistake of hiring me. But the other thing, I really want to interview the Director General. Mike Burgess has gone public with a lot of stuff at ASIO, and I would like to talk to him about that. So we're currently trying to approach them, which means I've got to go through the media liaison officer and finally get in contact with them. And interestingly enough, when I do get in contact, it's a lot of, we'll get back to you. And there's a lot of sort of voce and a lot of quiet, but hopefully we'll get Mike onto the show just to, the first thing I say is, would you do you want me back? To which I'm pretty sure I'll get a no. But no, the thing with ASIO is if they were to get up there and deny it, well, there's no point. The thing we were taught with ASIO is your cover story is you work for the public service. If anyone delves deeper, you work for Attorney General's D branch. And then if they delve any further, you tell them. You're not allowed to lie about where you work. You were given cover stories for very specific situations, but essentially the basic cover story. And in Canberra, it's brilliant. What do you do for a living? Oh, public servant. Yeah, whatever.
Everyone's a public servant.
Everyone's a public servant. So you just sort of got to run your game out that way. But ASIO have not reacted at all. I'm pretty sure they're listening to it though.
Well, what about, they're probably vetting it, checking everything.
Well, that there is that point, yes.
What about, your other stuff? Like I know you're an improviser, comedian, do shows. How has doing a podcast helped that side of your career?
It's a confidence thing, I think. I was quite shocked at the reaction we got for the show. I mean, the people that listen to it really enjoy it, and I'm sort of getting listener requests now. I got a phone call from my niece. My nephew's wife, which makes her my niece.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's a Navy officer. And she rang me up and went, I just had the weirdest experience. Why? I was in an intelligence briefing. Yeah. The head of naval intelligence here in Sydney says we all have to listen to I Spied. And I went, what? And she went, no, seriously, we've been told we need to listen to it. It's a really good sort of it's a lot of fun, but it's a good source for general intelligence and what's going on in the intelligence world. And I just went, oh, you're kidding. And I wound up a couple of weeks later, I was at my brother's 60th birthday party, and of course my niece was there. And she sort of walked up to me with the phone and went, I have someone who wants to talk to you. And it was her boss, the security guy, and the intelligence officer from the Navy, who just went, are you for real? And I went, yeah, I'm definitely for real. And he went, seriously? I went, I am seriously for real. And he went, we need to have a beer. And I was like, sweet, dude, I'd love to catch up. And I go, do you want to come on the show? Hang on a minute.
And then back,
reverse lights. So it was quite thrilling to get that support from some, or that sort of fandom coming from someone. But yeah, it's confidence. And also for the last year, I have had no outlet for performance other than teaching. And I teach improvisation to high school children, and that's a captive audience. But I'm teaching them to perform. I'm not performing myself. So it's been for me, it's been a real sort of pressure valve for that pent up frustration of not having an audience. So yeah, again, podcasting. If you're a frustrated actor or a frustrated comedian, do a podcast.
It sounds like you find it quite satisfying.
Oh, very satisfying. Now I still have.
Now you've got over the crippling anxiety.
I still have the anxiety. I can't explain it. I think it's just I'm a naturally worry kind of guy, and it's very nice for you to say that when you listen to it, you don't hear that. But that probably also comes down to the fact that as an improviser and as an actor, I got to make it work. Show's got to go on. I can't sort of go, yeah, look, sorry guys, I'm not feeling it. I hate people that say that. I'm not feeling it. So for me, it's like, no, you've got to make it work. Make it work. And with the improv side of it, it's really reinforced the power of storytelling. If you've got a really good story, and you've got the courage to tell it well, you will find the audience. And that's the joy of it. I think that's the real joy of podcasting is it's like, I've got 1,000 stories. I just need somewhere to get rid of them. Oh, wow, there's a microphone. Let's go.
Absolutely. And what about the sort of challenges with the show? Do you get sort of unwanted feedback? Do you get criticism? Does anything sort of, you spoke about online, on Twitter, but does any of it really sort of get to you?
No, it doesn't. And there's a really good reason why. And it goes back to the live show. And also I did a TV show way back, sort of 2000, 2001, called Going Home, which was an improvised drama set on a train. So it was on SBS. We'd film it from 7:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd improvise an entire episode. It would go to air that night. So it was 5 shows a week. So we're in studio 5 days a week. It was a real hard grind, but God, I love that show. It was the first show in history that had a forum, an online forum attached to it. And I started reading the comments.
Oh, dear.
And it got in my head. And it actually came up. There was a great moment where my wife said, I want to go to the movies. And I'd been sort of saying, I knew I was going to go to the movies that week with my wife, but on the train, I'm going, I might go to the movies. I'm going to see the new James Bond.
There we go.
And my wife said, so let's go to the movies. And I went, yeah. And she said, I really want to see Erin Brockovich. And I went, oh, look, yeah, Noel would really go and see James Bond. And she went, Noel lives in a garage and I'm more than happy for you to do that. And I went to Erin Brockovich, and the great thing was I went on air that the next morning, and they went, how was James Bond? Oh, I didn't go. Why? Oh, the girlfriend took me to Erin Brockovich. How was it? Really good. And it was a for me, it was a great change in the character. And even the writers were like going, hey, that's a really interesting thing with your character is if we keep throwing curveballs,
yeah.
Right? That makes the character more interesting and engaging. So, but, I got caught in this thing where I was reading the forum until I actually had the executive producer take me aside, Hal McElroy, and he went, stop reading it, mate. It'll do your head in. You can't win.
Were you trying to react to the feedback? Oh, they think I'm doing this. I'll try and change it.
Can I change? And it's like, he said, no, don't.
So what did you learn from that forum?
What I learned from that forum is people have opinions, but they're not necessarily right. Because another one, again, when I was doing I Spied, I went down to Melbourne to do I Spied at the Fringe Festival. And the thing is, the venue they put me in was like the other side of the city from everything else. So I was kind of isolated, and everyone was staying in Carlton and sort of that area, the north side of the city, and I was down in Toorak. I'm on my own, and I'm in a theatre doing a one-man show, and there is no one else involved in the Fringe anywhere near me. And I felt really lonely. And it was my birthday. I felt terribly, terribly lonely. And then I went online just to check reviews, because you're always looking for publicity grabs.
Especially good publicity.
And I went online and I found a blog, and it was basically scathing of the show.
Ouch.
And it was like this monumental depressive spiral. It was like I'm in this service department. I felt awful. I had the night off. I got a phone call from my wife to wish me happy birthday. She went, "You sound really down. What's wrong?" I went, "Oh, I read a review and I'm really unhappy about it. This guy said I'm a loser and blah, 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 blah." And she went, "Hang on a minute. Who is this guy?" I went, "I don't know, some blog." She went, "Oh, cool. Some blogger."
That no one's reading?
Yeah. You got 6 stars from the Adelaide Advertiser. You got 5 stars from the Age. You got 5 stars from the Herald Sun. But Joe Blogs literally is the guy who's going to drag you into a depressive spiral. And she just went, "Stop reading your publicity. Don't buy into your own publicity." The same way, don't buy into your own publicity, don't buy into your own criticism. Now, constructive criticism. So I've had friends go, "Oh, when you did that, mate, I really wanted to know more about that." Now, that might have been a time constraint. That might have been me getting something wrong. The Naval Intelligence Officer, the classic was when he sent me thinking, "You said this and that is utterly wrong." And it was great to go into the next episode and say, "Look, I need to apologise because I made this mistake. I said this is wrong," right? I have no problems being corrected, right? But I do, when it's a personal judgment, that would get under my skin. So I just remove the personal judgment.
I mean, constructive criticism and people leaving bad reviews are different things. So now you don't read anything? Is that sort of...
Occasionally I have a look. Generally I go and go, "How many stars have we got?" I was really angry when someone gave us a 1-star review but never left the review. They just gave it a 1-star review and it immediately dragged away the 5-star average that we had.
That was just a hater. Probably someone that doesn't like you personally.
Someone who doesn't like me personally, or somebody who just doesn't, as you said, it's a hater. Someone who just wanted to be, "Oh, everyone loves this, well, I'll hate it." And it's like, man, you just got rid of our 5-star rating. That really nickled me.
Yeah.
Now
it's a win for them, though.
I'm 4.997. I hate it.
It's a win for them, though.
Yeah, it's a win for them. But normally it's like, when people say really nice things, that's great. When people say really mean things, that's not great. But you can't buy into it. You've literally got to have really thick skin. And I think having, people, having the producers and Michelle turn around to me last week and go, "Dude, this isn't you. Don't do it." That's great. I was really sort of like, hang on a minute, until I went, hang on, these people really care. They care about the product that we're producing. So instead of feeling upset by it, embrace it. Now, understand that these people are looking after you and go with it. And the thing was, I felt quite buoyant afterwards. And I think that's one of the things I am getting from it.
Quite buoyant until they said, "We're not running it."
Yeah, we're not. No, the fact that they went, "We're not running it because it's not what you want to be." They don't want. Why are you picking a fight with somebody that isn't going to care? And it's like,
I'm intrigued by Angry Dave.
Oh, he's just such a twit. He's so annoying.
Maybe not then.
But the great thing is, and going back to that question of how has it affected everything else that I'm doing, it's given me a confidence to not worry about it. See, I had to do this stupid thing, this stupid fundraiser, and it was really embarrassing, and I just felt awful afterwards. Right? This was recently. And then it was just like, one, I was asked to do that as a favour, so it's not my responsibility that everything went wrong. And 2, it was one night. Who cares?
Yeah.
No one's going to remember it. And the people that are going to remember it don't care. So it's that whole idea of going, all right, just do your thing and get on with it. Last night I did my first live show since COVID, since March of last year. And it was great to get up there and go, I haven't done this for ages. Well, it's either going to work or it isn't. Don't worry about it. Get it done. So yeah, it's been a great. It's been mentally, it's been very, very good. It's very healthy.
Good. It's very
therapeutic. It's good for you.
It's a very healthy attitude, though, that you say, you've just got to go and do it. Do your best.
Yeah.
And you're not going to please everybody. Going to be good performance. Going to be not so good performances.
I think I'm less, funnily enough, talking about Angry Dave, I am less angry. And I can trace it back to the podcast because it gives me a platform to talk about things that I want to talk about. I mean, before podcasts, I had the live show, but the live show is very limited. You can only run it for so long. And after that, where do I talk about what I want to talk about? Now there's podcasting. Hang on, as I said, tomorrow we're recording an episode on how you radicalise someone into being a terrorist. Now, most people would why would we talk about that? Because some people find that fascinating and want to know that psychology. So, yeah, I felt like, and that's the other thing is with the anxiety is, my God, what are we going to talk about next week? What are we going to talk about next week? And now it's like, when are we going to have time to talk about this? So it's that
it sounds like it's like gathering momentum and picking up things like a ball, picking up things as it's going.
And as it goes on, we're creating this little vehicle for us to sort of play with and build on. Michelle's working on another podcast, which is basically politics for young people, which I think is a brilliant idea because I talked to my son and he's so disengaged. And I sort of turned around and went, well, I'm happy. She went, no, I don't need an old voice. I need a young voice. And she's like trying to find somebody that is politically engaged and politically informed, but young enough to be able to talk to young people.
And not a complete wanker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck with that, Michelle.
Heaps of those. Just don't get a Liberal Party staffer.
All right. So looking ahead at the podcast, what do you want to kind of improve on? What's something you think, okay, I can do this better?
I want more guests. I really want to talk to more people because we kind of find that when we do a guest spot, we get a lot more reaction from the audience. The audience really like to have that extra voice in there. I want to dig deeper into my own experience when I was at ASIO because there's some stories that I've avoided talking about because it's not so much it's a security question so much as am I comfortable talking about this yet? And I'm getting to the point now where it's like, yeah, I'm ready to talk about this.
Can you give me an inkling of what that sort of stuff is? Just give me a flavour because is it things you've done, things you've seen, things you're morally not so sure about now?
Things I've seen, things I've done. More to the point, the people that I met and how they affected me and how they literally affect our country. What's a good example of that? I talk about how one of the episodes, where was it? My favourite episode title was Hot Tub Spy Machine. I really liked that, where I wound up accidentally sleeping with a CIA operative. I didn't know.
Accidentally, just ended up in bed with her.
And the weird thing was there's like, when I got invited to this 4th of July celebration at the embassy, and I'm surrounded by every politician in the country, and this really strange experience where looking at these politicians and you suddenly realise, oh my God, you are as nervous as everybody else in this room. The only person who wasn't nervous, the only two people that weren't sort of like trying desperately to be nice to everyone around them because they weren't sure who most of us were, was Gough Whitlam. And I met Gough and Margaret Whitlam when Margaret Whitlam knocked me over. She stepped backwards and knocked me for 6. And I'm sort of getting up, apologising profusely.
I'm sorry for you
Mrs.
knocking me over.
I'm so sorry. And she just went, that's the first time a young man's ever apologised for me bowling him over. And, there's a few people around us and, all polite, oh, very witty, Mrs. Whitlam. And then you hear, Margaret! And the entire crowd just parted. And there is Gough in all of his pinstripe splendour. And he just looked at me and said, looks at me up and down and goes, "Put it down, you don't know where it's been." And I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And also the relationships Australia have with other countries in the intelligence sphere is really quite astounding, in that we have very, very strong relationships with a lot of countries and very bad relationships with a lot of other countries. But the way the intelligence world operates, it's really not James Bond, right? I met foreign intelligence officers of target countries, and it was like, you know what, dude? Literally, it's Sam. I think it's Sam and Bob, the sheepdog and the coyote from the Warner Brothers cartoons, and they punch on at the beginning of the day. Sam and Ralph. Morning, Sam. Morning, Ralph. They punch on, and then it's the wolf. The wolf is trying to steal the sheep, and the sheepdog wins every time, right? And then at the end of the day, they clock off and walk home together. And that's literally it.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of intelligence officers that like, this is a job, this is what I do. If you step out of line, I'll jump on you, but, you know, if we meet in the pub, let's have a beer.
So I guess that's what we can expect from I Spied going forward, more of that?
A lot more of that, a lot more of looking at what's going on now. Because the weird thing is I've come from we didn't even have the internet when we didn't have mobile phones when I first started at ASIO. And technology has really changed the game. Cyber is huge. We've already had one person on talking about cyber, and I'm already trying to line up another. But we want to look at the evolution of how intelligence has changed, but we also want to look at how, despite this massive evolution in technology and technique, the game does not change. It is still a very, very simple game. It's a jigsaw puzzle. It's a game of chess that's also a jigsaw puzzle and Risk. It's all, there's so many moving parts in the game. So we want to deconstruct how intelligence works a lot more. I think we can do a lot more of that in the podcast.
Yeah, right. I guess finally, really enjoyed hearing about I Spied. If unfortunately I Spied would end tomorrow, what would your favourite memory be from your podcasting so far? Because it sounds like it's something that you really enjoy doing.
For me, would be having an intelligence officer that I greatly respect basically turn around to me and say, "Mate, you really shouldn't have left." He basically turned around to me after he heard an episode, and I basically pontificated about what I thought the situation was. And he got in touch with me and he went, "Mate, you're absolutely right." And I'm like, "Really?" And he went, yeah, you really sort of missed your calling. You should have stuck around." And I went, no, mate, I was hopeless. He went, no. The plan was, because I left the organisation, I resigned. He said the plan was, I resigned after the Director General asked me to. He basically turned around and said, "You were expected to take sabbatical or long service leave, realise the futility of the arts industry, a career in the arts, and come back and switch over into the generalist stream." To which I went, "You're right. And which idiot was going to hold my hand through training?" And he went, "Me." I went, "What?" And he went, "Yeah, we want you because you're the sort of person we want." Because
did they want you to become a spy? Like a real spy?
Officer.
A real spy?
A real spy.
You really would have been James Bond then.
No, well, it's not James Bond. I would have. He said the thing is, analytically, you've got a way of lateral thinking through problems, which is appealing because that's how we uncover a lot of stuff. And also, you have a personality that is probably going to be very easygoing and easy with recruitment. He said the problem you have is you won't take anything seriously enough. And you were always looking for the joke, and that was the real concern was, can we train him because he's likely to screw it up just by being an idiot. I firmly believe that would have been a problem. But it was, for me, that was a really, it was kind of like a life-affirming moment. It was like, my favourite thing was at the end, I went, "So have I made a huge mistake?" He went, "No, you haven't. You're doing exactly the right thing right now. You
this
keep
destiny."
Yeah, it was like fate puts you here. But the nice thing is, and a lot of people sort of go, "Oh, you must really hate ASIO to do this." Oh, exactly the opposite. I don't hate ASIO at all. I have no animosity towards that organisation whatsoever.
It doesn't come across in the podcast.
Do they make mistakes? Yep. But you know what? Find anybody or anything that doesn't make mistakes. Right, I got quite a lot of loyalty towards them. I think they do an extraordinarily difficult job, and they do it very, very well. So yeah, if it was to shut down tomorrow, I'd probably sleep even worse for a while because I'd be going, what have I done wrong? And then I'd set up another podcast.
Well, I mean, that's a great story. And just, you said you're always looking for the joke.
Yeah.
When you're at ASIO. Was there must have been, can you give us a time at ASIO where it was such a serious situation you went away from that?
That would have been when funnily enough, it was very early on in the career when I found out that a friend of mine was potentially a bomb maker, because the whole thing was they interviewed me and I kept saying, no, look, you got the wrong guy. It's not, don't be stupid. I don't understand. And finally they said, look, we think we need you to understand what this is about. And they took me to the site of the bombing that was associated with it, and I saw what the bomb did. And it was like, that was just utterly horrifying. And to sit there and see what an explosive device can do, not only to a car, but also a human body, that was not pleasant, because they were still cleaning up the mess from the guy who was killed by the bomb. And it was the guy setting the bomb, died setting it. And it was that awful thing where it's like, my God, this is real. Right, terrorism is real. It happens, and the consequences of terrorism are ghastly. They truly are ghastly. I remember the Man Monis down at Lint Cafe.
Yes,
we were hosting an early Christmas lunch that day, and I went out to get ice. And as I'm driving along, it's like the city of Sydney is shut down. There is a terrorist incident, and it was like, I'm not going to tell anyone at home, because no one was watching their phones, no one was watching the television. It was everything. I'm just going to go through this. And it was that weird moment where I could go and tell everyone. And it was like the little ASIO gene kicked in and went, now is not the time. And I kept disappearing to like get on my phone and go, what's going on? Because it's like, it's an incident. It's in my city. I'm compelled to follow this thing. And what was fascinating about it was my mother turned around and went, what's going on? And I asked something, Mum, it's just some stuff for work. And as soon as I said it's stuff for work, my wife went, no, it's not. What's going on? And I sort of went, something happened in the city. And our kids would have been in the city. They were going to school in the middle at St Andrew's Cathedral School. They would have been in the middle of the city at the time. And, I just said, the entire city's been shut down. There's a terrorist incident going on in Martin Place. And it was just like everyone just left the table and sat down in front of the television. And Dan went, why didn't you tell us? And I went, because of this. It's Christmas. This is our Christmas celebration. Because we always have early Christmases because our families go in all directions at Christmas. So, everyone sat there. And then the weird thing was, halfway through, I just went, this is not a terrorist incident. Like just going, hang on, what's going on? That's not, the first thing he's asked for is an ISIS flag. This is not a terrorist incident. This was a guy having a psychological break. This is a criminal incident. It's a hostage. Technically it's terrorism because it's a hostage situation, but this isn't politically motivated. This is not politically motivated. This is personally motivated. It was terrible. That to me it literally took me being out of the organisation to look back and go, this is a really serious job. 9/11 was the other one, which is also the catalyst for me coming up with the show. My wife turned around after 9/11 and went, if you were ever going to talk about working for ASIO, now would be the time to do it. And it was like, yep, let's write a show. But that was, again, watching 9/11 was, oh my God, this is completely out of the books. You used to hijack planes to take hostages. You've just suddenly, and strategically, brilliant. No, we're just going to pick it up as a cruise missile with passengers. And suddenly the game changes. And that's the thing. And that's what we look at. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen with the future, with the show, is as the situation morphs and, the whole world evolves, we evolve to comment on it. Because that's literally what we are. We're commenting on the world as it moves through the intelligence prism. Fascinating fun.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to listening to more episodes. Dave, thanks for coming in and talking about I Spied. Really interesting show. I loved hearing about your work with it. It's fascinating. Finally found out you can't joke about terrorism. We got there in the end.
Oh, no, I can still joke about terrorism.
But it can be harder to joke about sometimes.
Oh, it can be harder.
Any good terrorist jokes?
Oh, well, I used to have a running gag where a spy walks up to the gates of heaven and St. Peter says, what did you do when you were alive? And the spy says, I was a spy. And St. Peter says, a spy? And the spy says, yeah, ask anyone. And St. Peter says, anyone? And the spy says, yeah, I wasn't any good. And that's how I'd open the show, because that was literally my career.
I'm glad we got a laugh to end because...
Yeah, and then a terrorist walks up to the gates of heaven and St. Peter says, what did you do when you were alive? And the terrorist says, I was a terrorist. He says, you're a terrorist and you want to come into heaven? He says, no, I'm here to tell you you've got 5 minutes to get out.
There we go. Dave, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
Podcast host revealed.